I am glad you're back. I'm glad you're back. A lot of familiar faces. I see some dear friends from Life's Journey UCC. Glad you could be with us. Some students, beloved folks from the community, our audience from elsewhere. Today we wanted to talk about Buddhism. And I think I might have mentioned earlier that what I would like to do today is tell a story. And we know that religious stories, we use the term myth in religious studies, which does not imply truth or untruth, right? The most productive question to ask of a religious story, particularly an ancient religious story, is not did it happen or did it not, or did it happen the way that it is told, because oftentimes they are told in more than one way. But why is it that people tell these stories? Why do the Buddhists, why have they for over 2,500 years told this story and passed it on generation after generation after generation? From a scholarly standpoint, the story seems to be a mixture of history and, let's just say, elaborated detail, right? As are most religious stories, and not just religious stories. I think we talked about George Washington and that cherry tree, didn't we? Yeah, it's a similar situation, I think. So we need to talk about the Buddha. But first, does anyone know what that name means? What does the name Buddha mean? Is it Mr. and Mrs. Buddha and their little son, Sid? Is that what it is? Is it the last name? Would they be under B in the Banaras telephone directory? I don't think so. What does Buddha mean? The enlightened one, right? That's the way, was that what you were going to say? That's usually how it gets translated, right? The enlightened one. So the question becomes, what does it mean to be enlightened? What does that mean? Yes. It means to wake up. Thank you very much. That is, at one level, that is exactly what it means. So the Buddha is the one who woke up. Well, woke up from what? Woke up from what? Apparently, he is the one who woke up from the daydream that you and I mistake for real life. Remember last week when we were talking about Hinduism, there's this sense that life is at some level illusory, and yet we take it so seriously. And it is that very seriousness with which we take it that causes us so much pain, that throws us off, right? That messes up, if you will, our karma, right? And karma will apply in Buddhism as it does in Hinduism. There are some differences, but a similar concept. So the Buddha is the one who woke up. Let's talk about how he woke up, okay? What happened? And one of the reasons this story has been passed down, I think you will find that it is, as my students like to say, very relatable. It is easy in some ways to relate to it, and I wonder if I am the only one in this room who might have had some experiences similar to the Buddhas. Okay, that puts us in rather rarefied company, but I think the Buddha himself, historically speaking, would probably say the same thing. He never claimed to be a god. Don't worship me, right? No. Who's going to get you to the ultimate? And what is the ultimate in Buddhism? What is it? Not heaven. That little old band from Seattle. Yes, it's nirvana, right? It's nirvana, right? And who's going to get you there? Is the Buddha going to carry you there like a baby? Not according to the Buddha. As far as we can tell, no. You're the only one who can get you there. It's up to you. It's up to you. Well, as far as we can tell, Siddhartha Gautama is his name. Siddhartha Gautama was born sometime in the 6th century BCE. Why do I say BCE? Come on, who's doing their homework? It's going to be on the final exam. Before the Common Era, right? Not BC, because that refers to a different religion, right? Before the Common Era, maybe around 560, something like that, give or take. It's difficult to date exactly. In a northeastern province of India, he's the son of a lord and his wife. As far as we can tell, Siddhartha's mother unfortunately passed away shortly after his birth, and I don't want to psychologize him, but you have to wonder if perhaps that might have had something to do with the journey he undertakes later in his life. But what we do know, at least mythologically speaking, is that shortly after his birth, and let's see if this rings any bells with anyone from a different religious tradition, some fortune tellers came to see Siddhartha's father, right? Because they had news for him. And what they told him was, your son is destined to be a great man. And he has a choice between two life paths. If he follows the way of the world, he will become a great ruler. But if he chooses the spiritual path, he will become one of the greatest religious leaders who ever lived. Now, you're that father. These fortune tellers come to you. Which way are you going to steer little Sid? Well, I'm guessing there are some students in this room whose parents are steering them down one of those two paths, right? That's probably one of the reasons why you are here, Elon. They want you to do well here, to get a great job, to make a lot of money, and you can support them in their retirement years. Isn't that how it works, right? The karma gets leveled in the end, right? Well, that is exactly what Siddhartha's father did. And he did it in the ways that he could. Now, this is a wealthy man, right? What he tried to do, and I think this is very human, okay? See if you can relate to this. What he tried to do was protect Siddhartha from all of the painfulness, all of the ugliness of the world, right? And so he built him a great palace for him to live in, basically quarantined him, you might say, though it wasn't put across that way. And that is where Siddhartha grew up. And eventually he met a beautiful princess. They were married, had a beautiful child, right? In other words, he has it made. He has it made. He has the life, right? He has the life. He is truly successful in a worldly sense. Well, that's not the end of the story. Something happens. Something happens to Siddhartha. And it's in part because his father's plan backfired. I would imagine those of you who are parents did very much the same thing, right? You try to protect your kids from that which hurts, right? I mean, you know you're going to go through some pain, but any pain you can spare them, right? On the basis of your own experience, you're certainly willing to do so if only they will, hear you and learn in their own way. Well, so Siddhartha has grown up in this palace, right? And he's unfamiliar with life's dark underbelly. And I'm going to embellish a little bit. But so there's one evening, he and his friends borrow the chariot from Dad, and they go out for a joyride. They go into town, right? Go into town. Where before, anytime he was going to go into town, his dad would send soldiers ahead of him to clear out anything ugly. It's like when the president comes to town, right? You got to clean the place up, okay? Well, it hadn't happened because Sid's out on his own, if you will. And he comes upon what are known as the four passing sights. The four passing sights. In other words, he sees four things that change him forever. The first thing he saw that caught his eye was this creature who looked like a human, but not like any human that Siddhartha had ever seen, because he was wrinkly and he was bent over, couldn't even walk on his own. He had the help of a cane, right? His hair's all gray, right? Some of it's gone. And Siddhartha looked at his friends and said, "What is this? What can that be?" And they said, "Siddhartha, that's you. That's you." I'm looking into the faces of some people who know what I'm talking about, and I'm learning it more every day, right? I'm grateful to still be here learning it, but yeah, things change, don't they? And if Buddhism is about anything, it's about changefulness, right? Siddhartha, just stick around, man. Stick around. It's going to happen. It will happen to you. It will happen to you, right? And I'm fortunate to get to spend my life with young people, right? With young people. And my students will tell you, I love my tribe, right? I love my tribe. But it is daunting to look into the eyes of the young. And I know my professors must have felt the same way looking at me in the classroom, right? And try to explain to them how different life gets as it goes on. It's just a quandary of life, isn't it? How do you explain to someone who is younger what it's like later on? And yet, it's what we do. And in many ways, that's what religions do, right? It's the culture passing down its lore, right? This received wisdom, this accumulation of experience to generation after generation. It's, in some ways, I guess it's our job here on earth, right? It's what we do. It's what we do. And I know that my students in their own day will do the same, right? And the same, and the same. It's the great chain of being, you might say. Well, this freaks Siddhartha out a little bit because he didn't see that coming. He didn't see that coming. Now, is it okay to say that Siddhartha had never seen somebody who was old? I mean, where are his grandparents, right? Is that the question we want to ask here? Not so much, right? Not so much. What's the point of the story here? What's the point of the story? Well, the next thing he sees is a young woman. And she's being carried on a stretcher because she can't walk, right? And she has these sores all over her. And she's coughing. And this look in her eye that is not good, that is not good. It's a mixture of pain and fear. Many of you have looked into that face. Some of you in the mirror, right? And he turns to his friends and says, what? Who is that? What is that? How does this happen? And they say, Sid, it's you. It's you. Sooner or later. Sooner or later. No one is immune, right? And we do the best we can. And Lord knows we're a health-conscious culture, aren't we? Maybe even obsessed with it. But it happens. It happens. You all know someone, right? You yourself have been in that dark valley. Oh, it's just such a part of life, right? And this one, it really shakes him up because this is not what he expected, right? Wait, this is life? This is life? But it's the third one that truly undoes him. He sees a body. I mean, he just thinks it's somebody sleeping by the side of the road. But they're not. It's a corpse. And it is utterly lifeless. It is utterly lifeless. And this one just stops Siddhartha in his tracks. What is this thing? How can this be? How can this be? Am I the only one who has stood at a funeral and asked that same question? How can this be? Right? The question that drives me every day and every night. And there's something about being in a house without power at night and candles lit. You get a chance to do some thinking, right? To think your own thoughts. How can this be? Why are we here if we are going to disappear? Does that not just suck all of the meaning and the joy out of life? Maybe not. Maybe not. Well, Siddhartha certainly started asking that question. If he hadn't been already, I think all of us do subconsciously, whether we face it or not. We're a little squirrely about death in our culture. We've talked about that, right? And we spend a lot of time and energy making sure we don't think about it. But I don't think it's unhealthy to sit and ponder it from time to time, right? And that's part of what this story is about, really. I mean, what is life about? And is it possible to live a meaningful life without asking these questions? Believe me, I envy folks who seem like they don't need to think about these things. I'm not one of them. And I relate to this story on a very personal level. And I think as a tribe, we know each other well enough that you would allow me to share this. I'm about Siddhartha's age when this happened to him. I'm in my mid-20s. I'm in seminary. I am studying to become a Baptist preacher. Believe it or not. Oh, my students will tell you every once in a while that Baptist preacher still comes out, right? If I get on about something. I'm studying to be a Baptist preacher because I feel God's blessing on my life. And I want to share it with everybody I can. And I'm just living my life. You know, going to class. I'm in my first marriage. Life's pretty good. I mean, there's some questions rumbling around. There always are. But then one day I get a call from my mom. And she's called to tell me that my grandfather, my beloved Papa, whose tattoo I wear to this day in remembrance, has had a stroke. And he's in the hospital. And I wasn't like my two brothers when I was a kid. I mean, they would be off tearing through the woods, right? Playing war or something, whatever, young guys do. I would walk up the street because I wanted to sit on the porch with Papa. And that was the thing that he would do, right? He was a grease monkey, an auto mechanic. He'd come home in the evenings, right? Roll himself a cigarette, right? And sit there and watch the traffic go by. And if that sounds boring to you, you should try it. It's kind of fascinating, right? And there's a music, that swoosh, 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 right? It gets kind of hypnotic after a while. But I think I just wanted to be near him because I loved him. And I knew that in his own gruff way, right? With that unique smell of tobacco and auto grease and maybe a little bit of whiskey, right, blended in, right? In that rough beard, I just knew that he loved me, right? And he's probably the person in my childhood who said the fewest words to me because he was not a man to talk much. But I think he might have taught me more about living than anybody else just by being there, right? And lasting. I mean, the guy was just, the life that he had lived and the things that he had seen. And he was just, well, so I drive home back down to South Carolina. And I wish I had never gone into the hospital room because it's a memory that I carry with me always. And this man that I had seen and known and loved, what was left of him was lying there on that bed. And he's curled up in the fetal position like a little baby. And he's got these umbilici coming out of him, connecting him to machines. And then he passed away, right? And I stood over his casket, and I'm looking at what Siddhartha is seeing here. And it really shook me up, right? It really shook me up because I had been told, by folks in my religion, right, that death is conquered. It's conquered. It's victorious over death, right? You don't have death to worry about. And there it was, right? There it was. Oh, it shook me up. I didn't even know how badly I was shaking. I go back to seminary, back in classes. Things are going okay. Maybe one corner of the tent's starting to flap a little bit, right? And I get another call from home to tell me that my pastor, the Reverend Hayne Rivers, the holiest man I have ever known in my life, right? Without whom I never would have gotten a college education. He took me under his wing, drove me over to Furman University, co-signed for me to buy my first car. I mean, this pillar of the community, pastor of the First Baptist Church in Union, South Carolina. He has liver cancer. There it is, the problem of evil. Why do good things happen to bad people? Right? Why do bad things happen to good people? And so I drive back home, right? And I'm standing in his hospital room with several of the other guys that he was mentoring at the time, right? And by this time, the disease has progressed quite a ways because his skin looks green. He's really, just dark brown around his eyes and these little points of light looking out, just laser beams, like he's looking into the very face of death itself. Which, of course, he was, right? And what he's telling us is, it's going to be okay, boys. I have prayed for a miracle, and God's going to heal me. I'm going to get up out of this bed and walk. And a week later, we were carrying his casket to the graveyard. What do you do? What do you do with that? Under what do you file that? Oh, I go back to school, right? Living my life. And this time things are really starting to get shaky because I'm studying these, my own religion and what is being said to me and what I'm experiencing. There's this cognitive dissonance. It doesn't match up and I don't know what to do. And it's scary because, in that tradition, if you doubt, then you are in sin, right? You're in big trouble. Don't think about it too much. Okay, this is where it gets truly weird, and just trust me that I'm not making this up, okay? It just so happened that semester I was taking a course called The Problem of Evil, during which I was studying the issue that I have presented to you in this class, the problem of evil. Why do bad things happen to good people, right? That was one of the texts that we read, written by a Jewish rabbi. And I go to class one day like I did every day. We're all sitting there in the classroom just like you are today, and the professor doesn't show up. And he doesn't show up, and he doesn't show up. And finally, his TA walks into the room up to the front and says, I am sorry to tell you, but last night our professor was killed in a hit-and-run accident on his way to Raleigh, riding a moped, which was his chosen way of transportation. So I'm taking a course on the problem of evil, and there it is staring me right in the face, right? Well, 3 strikes and you're out. I lost it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know who I was. I'd put all my eggs in this basket, and now the basket's just gone, ripped away. What do you do? Oh, I was angry. I was scared. I was hurt. I was lost, right? I was truly lost. And again, I don't think I'm the only one here who's ever had that feeling. When that life that you thought was so real, right, that you had built, that you just thought was, right, is no longer. When you're just shaken right down to your very DNA. Those are harrowing moments, right? Those are harrowing moments. And we work very hard to stay away from them. We buy insurance in case they come along, right? All these things we put in place, all the safety features on our vehicles, and yet, right? Whew. Well, old age, illness, death, right? Again, not the end of the story. There's one other sight that Siddhartha encounters. And it's a monk. It's a monk wearing a robe. He's given up everything. All he has is his begging bowl and a cane, a staff, and he is moving through life with this expression on his face of utter bliss. 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 And Siddhartha realized, okay, yeah, life's not what I thought it was going to be. But there's hope. There is hope. Right? There is hope in a truly lived life. And thus began his journey. Thus began his journey. He left his old life behind and started seeking the bliss that he found on the face of that monk. And it took him 6 years. That's about the length of time it takes to get a PhD, okay? Yeah. Oh, right? And can't possibly be any more difficult. Yeah, 6 years. 6 years he's journeying, right? First he's studying philosophy. And I mean, Siddhartha meant business, okay? He was serious about this thing. He studied Indian philosophy and religion, right? Everything up until that time. That didn't do it for him. And so he started following. And these were the major routes, paths, if you will, available to him in that day. And then he started following a group of ascetics, right? These people who deny themselves the pleasures of the flesh, right? And he started eating less and less, right? Meditating more and more. And they say it reached the point where he only ate 1 bean per day. And towards the end, he could touch his stomach and feel his spinal column. He was so thin, right? Again, he means business, right? He means business. And of course, what happened to him? Well, no, he didn't die, because if he had, we wouldn't have Buddhism, right? He did survive. As the story goes, he passed out, okay? He passes out. And there are 2 different versions of what happens next. And in these ancient stories, anytime you get 2 versions of the same story, chances are you're not dealing with strict historical fact, right? One or the other might be true, but there are 2 versions. One, he happened to be by the river, and he fell into the water, and that woke him up. In the other, he falls out by the roadside, and a young woman happens along with a bowl of rice and sees him lying there, and out of kindness feeds him some of this rice gruel, right? And that revives him. Well, which was it? We're not really sure. Not really sure. And it's probably not the point anyway. And so Siddhartha gets up, comes back around, and he decides, okay. And it's interesting what he does. He goes back to his roots. He goes back to his Hindu roots. Now, how is it that Hindus seek the ultimate? What ritual, what would you say is the main ritual of Hinduism as we've seen it? What do they do more than anything else? They meditate, right? They meditate. Siddhartha goes back to meditate. And you notice I'm calling him Siddhartha because he's not the Buddha yet, right? He goes back and he starts meditating. And what he says is that, this tree, this beloved tree that just went down over the weekend. Oh, that just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. Let's just say that's the Bodhi Tree, okay? It's going to be known as the Bodhi Tree, because Bodhi is the term for wisdom, B-O-D-H-I, for wisdom, the wisdom tree, right? He says, I'm going to sit under that tree right there, and I'm going to meditate, and I'm not getting up until I find that bliss. And that is exactly what he does. He sits down, and he meditates, and he meditates, and he meditates. You know how long he was there? You ever meditated? Yeah, I did a little of that on Friday night too, right? Oh, yeah. How long can you do it? Is it easy at first? Especially not for people in our culture. Good grief. We're so, busy. Oh, it's tough, right? Well, he sat there. They say that he sat and he meditated without getting up, without moving, for 49 days and nights. 49 days and nights. Is that possible? Of course not. Is that relevant? Of course not, right? He meant business, right? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to meditate, right? In other words, why is it that Buddhists tell themselves this story, right? Hey, if he can do it, I can do it, right? If he can do it, there's hope for the rest of us. So, He sits and he meditates until one night. In fact, let me read you an account of it from Houston Smith that describes the moment when, to quote the Doors, he broke on through to the other side, okay? Thereafter, while the Bodhi Tree rained red blossoms that full moon May night, Gautama's meditation deepened through watch after watch until as the morning star glittered in the transparent skies of the east, his mind pierced at last the bubble of the universe and shattered it to naught. Only wonder of wonders to find it miraculously restored with the effulgence of true being. The great awakening had arrived. Gautama's being was transformed, and he emerged the Buddha. The event was of cosmic import. All created things filled the morning air with their rejoicings, and the earth quaked 6 ways with wonder. 10,000 galaxies shuddered in awe as lotuses bloomed on every tree, turning the entire universe into a bouquet of flowers sent whirling through the air. Sounds like Mardi Gras here, right? Oh, wow. And when you think of Buddhism, do you, like me, think of the paintings of the Buddha or the statues of the Buddha, right? And there he sits, right? And there he sits. And unless it's that laughing Buddha that's so popular in the West, ordinarily he's just sitting there, right? Just utter equanimity. What is he thinking? Why doesn't he tell us? Oh, Buddha, what is your wisdom, right? It's like the Cheshire Cat. He's not telling us. You know why he's not telling us? Because there's only one person who can figure it out. And guess who that is? It's you, right? It's you. It's you. You got to figure it out. And sure enough, he wakes up after this experience, right? And he's been through all of this just grueling process. What do you think, what's the first thing you would do if you had meditated 49 days and nights? And what's the first thing you'd want? Well, get me a cheeseburger for one thing, but no, that doesn't fit this religious tradition, right? They're vegetarians. The devout ones are, at least. You know what he does? I mean, this is a tough guy, okay? He gets up and he walks about 100 miles, okay, to the city of Banaras in northeastern India, where in a deer park, and I'm happy to report that there are still deer living in this park, at least the park that is purported to be the site of his first sermon, he does deliver his message. This is what I have learned, right? He's turned it into a kind of, I don't know, I guess you could call it a system, and they're known as the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths. Again, we have Buddhist doctrine, right? Remember that dimension, Buddhist doctrine. This is what, and again, Buddhism is no different from any of the other religious traditions in that there are many Buddhisms, right, depending on where you find it and which tradition it comes out of. But Buddhists agree on this basic doctrine, the Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path, which I hope we can get to in a moment. And the first thing that the Buddha says, maybe someone in here knows. Do you know the first of the Four Noble Truths? Anyone? Yes. Life is what? No, life is a bowl of cherries. What? Life is suffering? Well, he sounds like a bummer, doesn't he? Oh, life is suffering? I don't know whether I want to follow this guy or not. Well, that's just the first of the Four Noble Truths, so, right? Yeah, life is suffering. Okay, here's one way to think about this, okay? We're sick. We suffer from life, okay, in one form or another. And we need a doctor. And we're going to go see Dr. Buddha. All right, so think of the Buddha as a doctor. When you go to a doctor, what is the first thing that he or she asks you for? Well, after what insurance do you have? Yeah. Thank you. Spoken like a true American, right? What is she going to ask you? What's she going to ask you? Yeah, what's wrong? What are your symptoms, right? What are your symptoms? And I think that's what he's doing, right? What are your symptoms? Life is suffering. It's hard. It's tough, right? Oh, yes, you can be sailing along, right? Enjoying yourself. Oh, winter's finally gone, right? Happy days are here again. Boom, right? Boom. Oh, that illness comes along, that car wreck, just whatever, right? Financial distress. Oh, it's tough, right? It's tough. And, even on our best days, always those little niggling doubts, right? Am I really good enough? Am I really smart enough, right? Did I do the right thing? Why did she say that to me? Why did I say that to her, right? All those little things, right? All those little things. It's tough. I can understand why someone might think the Buddha to be pessimistic, but that's not the end of the story, right? He's really just getting started. But if you think about it, okay, from the moment we are conceived, before we even arrive fully on the planet, okay, from the moment of conception, at least as we understand it, there are these little things called germs that are out to get you, right? They want to kill you, right? And they will if they get a chance. If they get a chance. Isn't that what HIV/AIDS is, right? You know anything about HIV/AIDS? What happens is your body's defenses are damaged, right? And the lower they go, the weaker they get. The germs are already there. It's not like they show up, right? It's just that they've been waiting for that chance. And as soon as it happens, boom, they're in there and they take you out. They take you out, right? One of the many reasons why it's been so crucial to develop some sort of cure for HIV/AIDS, right? Not to mention other diseases. From the moment of conception. And let's just say you make it through those 9 months, give or take, right? And many don't. Is birth a happy time? Oh, I'm not talking about after the birth. I'm talking about the moment itself. The build-up, huh? You ever witnessed that or experienced it yourself? It's, from what I can tell now, it's like screaming bloody murder, okay? In fact, if the mother can get her hands on whoever did this to her, it might just be screaming bloody murder. Yes, it is so traumatic for everyone involved. And ironically, one of the moments in life when you were closest to dying is the moment of your birth. Okay, so you made it here, right? You made it here. Childhood. How many never make it through? How many never make it? Whether it's illness, accident, The mess that is going on in Syria today, there was an article in the New York Times about the children who are suffering because of that war, and it is always, always, always the little ones, the wee ones, who suffer in a war. Soldiers, okay. Governments, okay. Refugees, but it's the children. It is the children, right? And the ones who survive will live traumatized for the rest of their lives, right? For the rest of their lives. Not a big fan of war, right? But then who is? Well, some seem to be. Anyway, you get through your childhood. Okay, you get through your childhood. Some of you lost friends in high school, teenage years, right? Oh, it can still happen. Young adults, it's so tragic, right? There's something sad about an elderly person, when they move on, but when it happens to someone young, then it takes on a level of tragedy that it might not otherwise have. Okay, you get through adulthood. You made it, right? Middle age, great time. Most of the time. What is happening to my hair? I didn't have these racing stripes before, right? Oh, I can't do things I once could. It's such a weird thing to be involved in this time, right? In this changefulness that does not stop. Again, our culture, youth obsessed, right? It's all about being young, looking young, right? Oh, yeah. Young people, enjoy it while it lasts. Oh, We don't want to get older. I mean, and some of you in this room know that there are tremendous benefits of being older, right? Oh, it kind of rocks in some ways, but it can be tough. It can be tough. It can be tough, right? Well, let's just say, and I see some of you out there jogging around, and maybe you want to live forever. I don't know what you're running from. I only run if something's chasing me. Actually, I think I do know what you're running from. But let's just say you live to be 100 years old, okay? 100 years old, right? And you're healthy the whole time. You know one of the things going to happen for you? You're going to end up going, well, yeah, you're going to die too, right? But you're going to end up going to the funeral of everybody you know and love. Every single one of them. Every single one. So go ahead, stick around, right? Stick around. Just say it. It's not like you're going to escape it. You can postpone it, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, right? Oh, but no, sooner or later, man, the Grim Reaper's coming for every one of us, right? That's just a fact. It is just a fact. How we deal with that, and I think what you see here is yet another religious tradition, yet another cultural way of dealing with that reality, right? We live in a world that we know we inhabit temporarily, and how do we make sense of that? How do we make sense of it, right? I think that's part of what is happening here, because if you can make sense of death, then you can start making sense of life, right? I'm happy to report to you that my own story had a happy ending, okay? After that tragedy, which really just sort of jettisoned me out of my whole life, right? Through the love of a good woman, right? Sheer stubbornness and stick-to-itiveness, right? And just hanging on like Papa, just hanging on for a while until I started getting some perspective in my life, right? Things turned around for me, went back to school, right? And the rest, as they say, is hysterical. And there was a while there, right? And I don't say this easily, but again, it's the tribal thing, right? It's the tribal trust. For a while, as a young man, I wasn't sure I wanted to be here. This world is hard, and it hurts people, and it sometimes doesn't seem to care. It just doesn't seem to care, right? Oh. But, I sat with it. And I thought it through, right? Some of you have been there, right? And if you haven't, stick around, right? Stick around. But if you do ever walk that dark valley, the last thing you should do is beat yourself up about it. It's taboo in our culture even to think about, right? Much less talk about. But no, it's part of life. We're here by choice, right? We're here by choice. Every morning we choose to stay. We choose to stay, right? And I have to tell you, I understand why I was in that place back then, but I am so glad that I decided to stay here. Now, granted, I would have spared myself a lot of pain in my life if I had checked out. But I would have missed so much joy. So much joy. So many cool things, right? Like getting to hang out with you all. Oh, right? Yes. Yes. Well, again, the unexamined life is not worth living, then the examined life might well be worth living, right? To know why we are here, where we're headed, what we're up to. So, after you tell your doctor your symptoms, what does she or he come up with for you? A diagnosis. You people are just right on. And yes, a diagnosis. Well, what's the diagnosis, doc? Right? What's the diagnosis? In other words, what's causing my symptoms? What causes that suffering? Oh, you're not going to like this. No, it's so un-American. Oh, no. Especially if you're in the advertising business. It's desire. It's craving. Craving causes suffering. I need that car. I got to have that car. I don't just want it. I need it. That shirt, I need that shirt. It's an awesome shirt. I got to have it. I got to have it, right? Oh. Work the job, make the money, buy the stuff. right? He who dies with the most toys wins. No, he dies too, right? He dies too. Oh, what did somebody say the other day? I've never seen a hearse pulling a trailer. You can't take it with you, right? Desire, right? Desire. Oh, we live in desire. I mean, how many commercials have you lived through in your life? How many millions, right? How many? They just keep coming, and they just keep coming. You can't even walk down the street, drive down the highway without, hey, you need this, you got to have this, right? But I think this desire goes even deeper. In some sense, you might say, it is the desire the wish for private fulfillment. The thought that somehow it is all about me. And if I can just get my needs met, everything's going to be okay. That's so much of what causes our pain. Not thinking in terms of us, right? And I mean us as broadly defined as possible. Not just the ones, and this is where, for me, the circle of compassion comes in. How big is your circle of compassion? How many people do you care about, right? And I mean really care, right? Is it just you? I know some people like that. I don't hang out with them, right? Is it your loved ones? Okay, maybe a few neighbors, some friends, right? Is that your circle of compassion? Does it go beyond that? Does it go, I don't know, to your community? Does it go even beyond that, right? I mean, how big is it? Who do you care about, right? Who do you spend your time and energy on? How big is it? What about people who are different from you? Are they in your circle of compassion? Right? What about people who are not just different, but different in a way that you don't approve of? Compassion? Or are they out in the cold, right? It's that desire that shrinks the circle, right? And again, let me take it one step further because the Buddhists would, okay? It's not just about humans. It's not just about the two-legged ones, right? No, all creatures, right? Circle of compassion. How big is it, right? That's what causes our suffering, is that desire to think that, in fact, the moment as a child you first use the word my, you cut yourself off from everybody else. My. And you know a 2-year-old loves that word almost as much as the word no. And I don't mean being told no, I mean saying no, right? My. It's mine. It's mine. Craving, right? Craving. How do we let go? Because the more we hold on to, the more we hurt. There's another story, it's not from Buddhism, but it is from India about the same time, about the dog who found the bone, right? Oh, it's the most awesome bone ever, loving this bone, right? And it was great until the other dogs found out about it. And they chased the dog down, killed him, took his bone, right? Well, the dog who ended up with the bone, really happy. Same thing happened, right? You chase what you love, and that very chasing is what throws you off course. So, well, we have our diagnosis, right? Life sucks, in one manner of speaking, right? And it sucks because we desire, we crave. I think craving might be a better word, right? So after the diagnosis, what's the doc going to give you? I always have a question for the doc after the diagnosis. Am I going to make it, right? What's the prognosis? Well, that's the third of the Four Noble Truths, right? The news is good. Craving has a cure. If craving is what causes suffering, what's going to get us out of this mess? You got to stop craving. Right? That's the thing. It's the thorn in the side, right? You got to stop craving. How are you going to do that? Well, that's the fourth noble truth. It's called the Noble Eightfold Path. I don't have time to walk us down that path today. I wish I did. But you can Google it. That's still a funny expression for me. To Google it, right? Yes, Google the Noble Eightfold Path. And what it is And it is. Think about it for a moment, okay? Think about it for a moment. Out of all the metaphors that Siddhartha Gautama could have used, he chose the term path. Path, right? Path. And again, if you look at him in his historical context, he is not saying, I'm going to carry you like a baby to nirvana. He's saying, this is the path that I walked. Perhaps you should walk it too and see if it takes you to nirvana. And if it doesn't, you might have to chart your own path. Right? I can show you the way, but you're the one who has to walk it. You're the one who has to walk it. And I think, actually, at some level, that is what we are doing here today. We are looking for a path in life, are we not? Oh, just give me some light in this darkness through which we stumble all too often, right? Oh, we're trying to figure out what's going on so that we can figure out how to live in that, what is going on. Crucial to step outside your own, we've talked about this before, outside your own bubble, right? To look through a window other than the one that has been presented to you, right? So that for the first time, perhaps you can understand your own window, right? And to draw on this wisdom, this collective wisdom that humans have put together over so many centuries and millennia, right? In order to carry it forward, Here at Elon, we prize living the life of the mind. But one of the things that I most love about Elon, it isn't just about the mind, right? It is actually living that life in the real world, right? How does this information change the way that you live? To change the way that you see yourself, that you understand yourself, your world, and others? How does it change the way that we treat others, right? Maybe with a little more kindness, a little more understanding, right? A little more empathy. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it for this week. I hope you'll come back next week. Unless there's a flood.